Happy Wednesday. Today is Wednesday, April 15th, 2020, and I'm so excited to be here today celebrating the third day of Week of the Young Child, the 2020 edition. And today we're celebrating Read Together Wednesday. So here in a few minutes, I'm going to read one of my favorite books together with...
My name is Ira Ray, and I am 7 years old.
That's right. So I'm going to be reading together with my daughter, Addie Ray. She's 7 and in first grade at Mina Elementary. We miss you, Mina. We especially miss her first grade teacher, Miss Burleson at Mina. We can't wait to see you guys soon. Before we get started reading this book, one of my favorite books, I'm going to take a quick minute to talk about why reading is such an important activity to incorporate into your homes and into your lives and into the school and into our community. Reading is one of the best ways to introduce new language, build and expand vocabulary, and help children associate meanings with their words. So children are able to use context clues to look at the pictures and see what's going on and match it to the words that they're reading and make meaning of them. It's also a great way to practice letter and sound recognition and to practice sight word reading, which are words that you can fluently read on the dot without any hesitation. So reading is just an all-around great activity to help build and grow literacy and language acquisition skills. So it's highly encouraged that you spend about 20 minutes a day reading with your kiddo. Either you can read out loud with them or have them read to you, especially if they're in that kindergarten, first grade level. They really need to start practicing and reading books. You also need to make sure that you're reading with your infants and your younger toddlers, even if they're not talking, even if you think it's silly and they're not going to understand or comprehend what's going on. It's super important to be reading to them at least 20 minutes a day because infants and toddlers really absorb all the information that's being given to them. And they're taking in all that language and all that new information that you're providing them through reading, and they're processing it in their mind, and that's how they eventually begin to speak to you. So I highly encourage you to read to all ages, or at least have them read to themselves or read aloud to you for at least 20 minutes a day. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, we're reading one of my favorite books today. We're reading Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And this book's author is Judy Barrett. And remember, the author is the person who writes the book. And this book's illustrator is Ron Barrett. And remember that the illustrator is the person who draws pictures. And this is the cover. We were all sitting around the big kitchen table. It was Saturday morning, pancake morning. Mom was squeezing oranges for juice. Henry and I were betting on how many pancakes we each could eat, and Grandpa was doing the flipping. Seconds later, something flew through the air, headed toward the kitchen ceiling, and it landed right on Henry. After we realized that the flying object was only a pancake, we all laughed, even Grandpa. Breakfast continued quite uneventfully. All the other pancakes landed in the pan, and all of them were eaten, even the one that had landed on Henry. So you can see up here in this picture, that's where the pancake landed on his head. That's silly. That night, touched off by the pancake incident at breakfast, Grandpa told us the best tall tale bedtime story he'd ever told. Across an ocean, over lots of huge bumpy mountains, across 3 hot deserts and 1 smaller ocean, there lay the tiny town of Chew and Swallow. So here's that huge ocean, those bumpy mountains, the deserts, and another small ocean. It looks like maybe there's a small town over here. In most ways, it was very much like any other tiny town. It had a main street lined with stores, houses with trees and gardens around them, a schoolhouse, about 300 people, and some assorted cats and dogs. But there were no food stores in the town of Chew and Swallow. They didn't need any. The sky supplied all of the food they could possibly want. The only thing that was really different about Chew and Swallow was its weather. It came 3 times a day, at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everything that everyone ate came from the sky. That sounds kind of silly. They don't have any restaurants because their food comes out of the sky. Isn't that silly? Whatever the weather served, that was what they ate. But it never rained rain. It never snowed snow, and it never blew just wind. It rained things like soup and juice. It snowed mashed potatoes and green peas, and sometimes the wind blew in storms of hamburgers.
Ew.
Ah. The people could watch the weather report on television in the morning, and they would even hear a prediction for next day's food. When the townspeople went outside, they carried their plates, cups, glasses, forks, spoons, knives, and napkins with them. That way, they would always be prepared for any kind of weather. If there were leftovers, and there usually were, the people took them home and put them in the refrigerators in case they got hungry between meals. That's pretty crazy. He's watching the prediction. It looks like it's got some clouds and some meatballs, and then it's raining food. And they're catching it on their plates at football and with their umbrella here, feeding its dog juice. Isn't that silly?
Super silly.
Dinner one night consisted of lamb chops, becoming heavy at times, with occasional ketchup. Periods of peas and baked potatoes were followed by a gradual clearing, with a wonderful jello setting in the west. The sanitation department of Chew and Swallow had a rather unusual job for a sanitation department. It had to remove the food that fell on the houses and sidewalks and lawns. The workers cleaned things up after every meal and fed all the dogs and cats. Then they emptied some of it into the surrounding oceans for the fish and turtles and whales to eat. The rest of the food was put back into the earth so that the soil would be richer for people's flower gardens.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that clever though? They found a way to use all the leftovers to help other things like animals that are hungry and ocean animals, and then they put it back into the ground and made the soil help the flowers grow more.
Ooh, that sounds crazy.
It does sound crazy, but that's such an awesome way to help people out, huh?
And also gross by putting it in the ground.
Sounds gross. Life for the townspeople was delicious until the weather took a turn for the worse. One day there was nothing but gorgonzola cheese all day long. The next day there was only broccoli and overcooked. And the next day there were Brussels sprouts and peanut butter with mayonnaise. Yuck. Another day there was a pea soup fog. No one could see where they were going, and they could barely find the rest of the meal that got stuck in the fog.
Yeah.
That looks pretty gross. It's the pea soup fog down here.
Yeah. It has dead fish. It has like fish, ducks, goats.
Ooh, that sounds gross.
Yeah.
Maybe those are all things that are lost in the fog.
Even a spoon.
Spoon. The food was getting larger and larger, and so were the portions. The people were getting frightened. Violent storms blew up frequently. Awful things were happening. On Tuesday, there was a hurricane of bread and rolls all day long and into the night. There were soft rolls and hard rolls, some with seeds and some without. There was white bread and rye and whole wheat toast. Most of it was larger than they had ever seen bread and rolls before. It was a terrible day. Everyone had to stay indoors, roofs were damaged, and the sanitation department was beside itself. The mess took the workers 4 days to clean up, and the sea was full of floating rolls. To help out, the people piled up as much bread as they could in their backyards. The birds picked at it a bit, but they just stayed there and got staler and staler. There was a storm of pancakes one morning and a downpour of maple syrup that nearly flooded the town. A huge pancake covered the school. No one could get it off because of its weight, so they had to close the school.
Hey, Mama.
Wow, what?
That pancake's huge and one landed on the tree.
That's right.
No one would want to eat that.
Right, so here's all the rolls that were in the ocean, and here's where they sat and they got stale. And this is the huge pancake that landed on the school, and it caused the school to close, kind of like right now we have the virus out that's causing our school to close. And so, like we can't go to school, the kids in the book aren't able to go to school either because it's closed because of this massive pancake.
And the ocean looks green and gross. Yeah.
And that might be because of the storm. Lunch one day brought 15-inch drifts of ice cream, cream cheese, and jelly sandwiches. Everyone ate themselves sick, and the day ended with a stomach ache. There was an awful salt and pepper wind accompanied by an even worse tomato tornado. People were sneezing themselves silly and running to avoid the tomatoes. The town was a mess. There were seeds and pulp everywhere. So here's all of our peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Ooh, that's a crazy looking tomato tornado.
Even he's going swimming and he doesn't even know.
That's right. Crazy. Oh, yeah. They're having ice cream.
That man stick in the bath.
Ooh, because the tornado, it picked up its bathtub.
That's gross. You can see.
The sanitation department gave up. The job was too big. Everyone feared for their lives. They couldn't go outside most of the time. Many houses had been badly damaged by giant meatballs. Stores were boarded up, and there was no more school for the children. So a decision was made to abandon the town of Chew and Swallow. It was a matter of survival. Wow.
Mommy,
There is so much food all over the town.
In the sky.
There are. Those are those crazy pork chops. There's ice cream. There's a huge hamburger, and it's squishing someone.
There's huge donut and some yucky soup.
Look, and this person got like a macaroni noodle stuck on his head.
Oh, Mama, it's just like the movie because he got one stuck on his head.
Oh, yeah?
Uh-huh.
The people glued together the giant pieces of stale bread, sandwich style, with peanut butter, took the absolute necessities with them, and set sail on their rafts for a new land.
Whoa. Hey, Mama, you forgot to show.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to show the picture.
Hey, Mama, that's a big one, and look.
It's a big, huge sandwich boat.
And all the food are falling them.
That's right, all the meatball. Well, it's piled up so bad that it's just overflowing into the ocean.
And there's
They have a sail. Their sail for their sandwich boat is made out of a piece of pizza and some
cheese?
Swiss cheese.
Oh, even the dog's on there.
That's right. Well, they took their necessities,
Hey,
and
Mom.
necessities are things. Their necessities are things that are important and that you need to get through life.
Hey, Mommy,
Mm-hmm.
that dog looks like what the old man's dog.
Oh, in the beginning of the story,
Mm-hmm.
that's a good observation. After being afloat for a week, they finally reached a small coastal town which welcomed them. The bread had held up surprisingly well enough for them to build temporary houses for themselves out of it. The children began school again, and the adults all tried to find places for themselves in the new land. The biggest change they had to make was getting used to buying food at a supermarket. They found it odd that the food was kept on shelves, packaged in boxes, cans, and bottles. Meat that had to be cooked was kept in large refrigerators. Nothing came down from the sky except rain and snow. The clouds above their heads were not made of fried eggs. No one ever got hit by a hamburger again, and nobody dared to go back to Chew and Swallow to find out what had happened to it. They were too afraid. Henry and I were awake until the very end of Grandpa's story. I remember his goodnight kiss. Sorry about that. So here's all the bread that they used to build their homes that they used.
Hey, Mama. What about that was a long time ago what about that story was true?
I don't know. I was wondering if this was true and maybe his grandpa used to live there and that's why he's telling the story.
Because of the dogs, it looks like that they had the dog that
the same
got
dog.
on the boat.
Well, let us find out. The next morning, we woke up to see snow falling outside our window. We ran downstairs for breakfast and ate it a little faster than usual so we could go sledding with Grandpa. It's funny, but even as we were sliding down the hill, we thought we saw a giant pat of butter at the top, and we could almost smell mashed potatoes.
Ooh, Mommy.
That's funny.
That looks like the dog.
It does look like the dog, and this looks like the mashed potato hill that it snowed and Chew and Swallow.
She's a big sister, he's a small brother.
The end.
There's mashed potatoes.
That's right, that's a bowl of mashed potatoes. So again, thank you all for joining me today. This is one of my favorite books. I love it. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Remember to take about 20 minutes each day to read with your kids or have them read aloud to you. And we will see you all tomorrow for Crafty Thursday. Bye, guys.